Hey, good morning, class. I just wanted to make a quick video because I know there were a number of questions about the social science or the social science experiment and sort of what ultimately I'm looking for. And I know we had previously had the file I sent out, which outlines in general the steps that you're going to do to create this project. And really, what I want to focus on here is the interpretation and analysis of results, because that's ultimately what you guys will be working towards. And it's basically writing a social science report. And I've also uploaded this file, how to write the social science report, um, with a number of examples, or sorry, not a number of examples, but just the general outline that the paper will take. So it's up to you guys to read this. It's very clear, very thorough, so I think it should be helpful. Also on this sheet, I have a folder of previous challenge and change social experiments, which I think you'll find useful, and I make a note that uh, the last class I had did not share their information the way I want you to in a written report like this. So just know I use these only to show you the type of research that people did and not sort of how they finalize their research. But what I really do want to talk about today is I want to actually look at a social science report example. So before you get any further into this video, what I would say is read this file that I have, How to Write a Social Science Report. Um, sorry, you can find it on this document again, Social Science Investigation Project, writing your reports there. Um, I also linked it down here where you can write it. If you need to ask me further, I can send you everything as well. It's up here as well, How to Write a Social Science Report. So everything is right there. And so let's get into it here. And let's go preview. There we go. Okay. So basically what I do is I'm expecting, again, you guys to know what the 4 steps or 4 sections of a report are. The major ones are the introduction, the method, the results, and the discussion. As well, there's an abstract at the beginning, and there are references at the end. So I'm using a professional uh, social science report, I guess you can say. Obviously, I'm not expecting you guys to write to this depth and level. These are PhD, Paul Krishner and Aaron C. Karpinski. I'm assuming they're professional social scientists working out of a university. It's been published in Computers and Human Behavior, so it's highly academic. But let's get into everything right now. So at the very beginning of your paper, you're going to have an abstract, and like I say in the written response, or how to write, sorry, a social science paper, the abstract really just gives a very brief overview of your purpose, what your hypothesis is, the method that you went through, basically how you conducted the experiment, and what the results were. And again, you don't interpret the results or anything. It's basically just a straightforward, sort of what happens. And again, I'll link actually, before I even go any further, I will link this file in the description of the YouTube video, and I'll put the link in the file as well that I just said, writing the report. So I'm not going to read everything. You guys can read it yourself. Up here, more or less, is the authors talk about sort of their purpose, why they're doing this study, and the study is called Facebook and Academic Performance. And basically what's happening is they're looking at, well, how does Facebook affect academic performance? So they sort of give their purpose there. Their method, they say, it's, where is it here? Oh yeah, this article presents preliminary results of a descriptive and exploratory survey study involving Facebook use. So they're basically saying that they used a survey, and the results, they basically said, as in relation to academic performance as measured by self-reported grade point average and hours spent studying per week, results show that Facebook users have reported lower GPAs and spent fewer hours per week studying than non-users. So there's nothing that says, why this is important or anything. It just says, this is the purpose. This is what I think. I don't know if they say they think that will happen. No, they don't say they think that will happen. And just note as well, what I say for writing a social science report isn't final. Like this article, or sorry, this report I'm showing, Facebook and Academic Performance, does actually is a little different than, in some ways, of what I want. So I did my best to find the article that was relevant, straightforward, and very similar to what I'm expecting from your social science report, but it does vary in some ways, and often some ways minor. Like, for example, at the beginning, there isn't really a hypothesis. But that's not the important thing. The important thing is what's gone into the abstract here. Sorry, the abstract. So what happens next in your social science report is you're going to write an introduction, basically the purpose of your study, why you wanted to conduct this study, why it's important to society, what's your purpose, basically. Also fills in a little bit of background research, and like I said, background research is really just what's gone on with your topic before. Considering nobody in the class is breaking new ground, you're not expected to, we're not PhD students writing our dissertation, your topic's going to be written about before, and there's nothing wrong with that. But what you will have is you'll have some background research just basically saying, well, what's already been done with this topic. And also you're going to, in your introduction, have a hypothesis. What you're going to notice in this article is the introduction is incredibly, I think the whole article is 9 pages, and the introduction is about 4 or 5 of them. Your introduction doesn't have to be that long. I'd like, the results and the interpretation of your results to be the longer section of it. But you'll see some of the things that the two authors do in this study here. Again, I would link to the article. I would read it so you can go through and figure out what's happening with it. I think it'll be beneficial. But in general, in the introduction, he sort of goes over this idea that Generation Y, this net generation, is infused by technology. And basically here he says, or the authors say, unfortunately, most empirical research shows that this is not the case, finding either that 1, children do not possess these skills, multitasking, and 2, that acting in this way negatively affects processing information. This article first tackles these 2 widely held modern-day truths and then presents the results of a preliminary study on the potential relationship between Facebook and academic performance. So basically here, he's saying sort of the purpose of the study is to look at the students cannot students cannot multitask, and it will negatively affect their ability to process information, and as well looking at Facebook and academic. The introduction continues to go. Oh my god. Let's zoom in here. So, quite a long introduction here. And again, what you'll do is if you read through this, you'll see there's a lot of parts where he'll cite additional sources. Like in addition, Bestall stated that the current generation of children and young adults have advanced relationship with technology that is formed at birth. Prensky 2001 noted their familiarity with and reliance on information and communication technology. They're immersed in technology. So this is, a lot of it is background research where the two authors explain what's already being done and what previous researchers, social scientists, have already stated. And what's really interesting, if you read through the article, they give both the positive and negative. For example, the authors will say, some studies have found that there's technology use and multitasking the students and people we studied can, and other ones basically saying that no, it's multitasking is a myth, and it impacts their ability to process information. So when you're doing your background research, don't be afraid to show articles that show a different side. Nothing is ever clearly black and white. So if you find articles and previous research that's says something opposite of what you think will happen, something opposite your hypothesis, don't worry, put it in there. It shows you're very thorough with your information as well. You have the ability to look fairly at both sides of the coin, so to speak, and that's a really good skill for the social sciences. So for example, he asked some questions. I mentioned down the road, in your paper, down the road sounds like a terrible cliche, that you'll have your research questions, and you've already done that. You already sort of know what questions you're trying to answer with your report. And what you'll notice in this article, if you read it, the author really doesn't have any research questions. They sort of have research statements, like I more or less noted above. He hints at sometimes, or these authors hint sometimes at questions, but it's not really what they're looking at. So just because this one, this one doesn't, or this article doesn't present research questions as you are, don't worry, you still do it the way I mentioned, and have your research questions in the paper itself. So, as well as the youth of today a Homo sapien, and can children, adolescents, and emerging adults really multitask? But does such an information technology savvy generation actually exist? So he asks the questions, but they're not really the author's research questions. And then there's another point I highlighted here. First, they are capable of playing with technology, but not really using it effectively. They can Google, but lack information skills to effectively find the information they need, and they also do not have the knowledge to adequately determine the relevance of truth of what they have found. So again, sometimes it seems like if you're reading the article, the author's making a hypothesis, and the author really, in this case, doesn't have a hypothesis in the sense of they're doing research to figure out something. In the first page, the author, again, right here, says that children don't possess these skills and it negatively affects their information. They'll do a survey. He doesn't really have these authors don't really have a hypothesis, but you should. You should sort of, after doing your background research, think, I think this is what's going to happen. So if we go through, you can see here there's a lot to this introduction. The authors look at what they term Homo sapiens, look at multitasking in general. They look then at social network sites and Facebook. So again, I have highlighted up here some example of sort of what some of the background research, the authors are summarizing some of the background research when they say results indicated that if the interpretations are related to the context at hand, then if the interruptions are related to the context at hand, multitasking, then the interruptions are perceived as beneficial, although the disruption cost is the same as with interpretations that are not similar to the context. Additionally, it was found that interrupted work is performed faster but at a price. Subjects in the interrupted conditions or multitask conditions experience a higher workload, more stress, higher frustration, more time pressure and effort. So the author again is going through the background research and explaining what happens, and make sure again to cite all information. Then they go on to talk about Facebook. Let's keep going here. You can see a ton Facebook. So like I said, there's a lot in this introduction that I don't want to go through. It's in its entirety, but your introduction will be a lot shorter, as I'm not expecting you to do a full survey of what background research there is on the topic. There's probably 20, 30 articles in here from professional sites. A good place to go is Google Scholar might be able to find you something, but it's just reading this article will give you a general overview of what background information there is. What you'll notice in the next section of your paper is going to be methods. This one's 4. I have that as your second section. Again, don't worry about those minor things. Just note that social science papers are usually most often divided into introduction, method, results, and then a discussion explaining why these are important. So the method section is really divided into 4 subsections. Participants, and you can see they've subdivided it into so you have a subheading and then a sub-subheading. That's fine if you want to do that. You can organize your information well. Basically, participants is just the demographic information. So they say data was collected from 102 undergraduate and 117 graduate students at a large public Midwestern university, a total of 219 students. And then they divide it into race and gender, I believe, and graduate and undergraduate. So you can divide your demographics and participants however you want. The measure is really simply sort of how you recorded your observations and your responses. And basically, they say a survey was developed containing 5 sections of a closed response, i.e. yes, no, Likert type scaling. You don't need to know all these fancy terms. And open response items. So basically, they're just saying our measure was a survey. For you guys, give some detailed examples of this measure, so maybe a sample question. And you can see it goes into some detail, but section 1, provide demographic information, section 2, academic information, section 3. So be specific, but at the same time concise about what your measure is. Then the other portion of it is a procedure, and this is sort of where you explain how I'm losing my train of thought. How your social science experiment was carried out. So what did you actually do during this section? And I just highlighted some small points. It's not the most important, but basically saying things like participants were recruited by visiting scheduled classes and asking for volunteers to complete surveys in the summer and fall quarters of 2008. Permission from instructors was obtained prior to visiting. And basically, they go through and explain what happened. Okay, and then they have a bit of an analysis here, which I didn't really ask you for an analysis, so I kept that more in the results. And the one section that I have in the Writing a Social Science Report that's different is I didn't really do a design. where I say, in this subsection, design, the how or the current study is detailed, was a study, an experiment, survey, etc. And that was, he didn't call it design. He put that sort of in the measure section, but that's fine. That's okay. So it basically said your design is like it was a survey. So it sort of puts two into one there. And then you can see section 5 as a whole, the results. It's a lot of in-depth stuff. And the results section is, if you think of sort of the method is what I did, and then sort of the results are what happened. And in the results section, you don't explain, why these things are important or anything like that. What you really do is just literally explain, you've done your survey, you've done your social science experiment, etc., what really happened, what were the results. Okay, let's move over here. I don't know why my computer's going so slow. So they go through some descriptives here. You don't really have to go through all those descriptives, basically explaining who these people were, what courses they were taking, what they were studying, etc., things like that. There's a lot of numbers. You don't have to go into all this detail again, where it's looking of the remaining GPA cases. Analysis revealed no outliers. GPA variable scaled range. Like, there's a lot of numbers that I'm not expecting you to go into, like MANOVA results. Don't go into any soup. You don't have to do any additional research. You just analyze your results as best as you know how to. So basically, the 5.3 and 5.4 other descriptive results and other qualitative results is a little easier to figure out, but again, you can read through that. So, for example, they're saying in the sample without outliers, Facebook users, the number 141, and non-users, 68 reported comparable percentages of daily average internet use with between 1 and 2 hours per day is the highest category endorsed, 42.6 for both. So you can see here, that's a little more straightforward in what your results will be. And the last section is really the discussion, where you're explaining a lot of things like, did your hypothesis support your results? Why did the results turn out this way? How could the study be improved? What should we do in the future for this topic? Application to the real world. And there's a lot here. So basically explaining, the 3 purposes of the study was this. And then they say, the analyses revealed 3 major groups of finding. Facebook users and non-users were significantly different from each other, with Facebook users reporting both a lower mean GPA and spending few hours per week studying on average. Though the amount of the internet stayed the same, Facebook use and GPA hours spent studying is sustained regardless of student status. Facebook non-users report working more hours per week. So it's really just going through sort of what do the results really show for society.
There's now 1 minute until this morning's
Fantastic, and I'm almost done. And what you can see as well, if you read through this here, there's some of the major points about negative relationship between Facebook use. And again, they'll sort of go through different aspects of where the future studies will go, such as this section right here. What's the future direction of everything? And again, there's a sort of conclusion as to where this thing could go, explaining, we're sort of only at the tip of the iceberg. And that's really the case. And what you'll notice is I've laid out 6 questions for you guys in the Writing a Social Science Report that this didn't really follow, but the authors do a good job of sort of explaining, future direction, where the study was limited, what could have been done. And obviously at the very end, cite your sources. Pretty straightforward. APA formatting, I can help you with that. Don't fret too much about the number of sources here. You're not expected for that many. You should have maybe about 5 to 10. Sorry for the bell. But that's sort of where I wind down. I hope you get a better understanding of a social science report and what's expected.
Good
and take care.
Markville.
Bye.
And here in this